Kid Jordan, the song is Forever. He's a New Orleans artist. This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, the War and Peace Report. We're broadcasting on over 500 stations around the country. On Pacific and NPR radio stations, low-power community and college radio stations, public access TV, and PBS TV stations, and both TV satellite networks on Dish Network Channel 9415, Free Speech TV 9410, Link TV, and on DirecTV Channel 375. And we're video and audio podcasting at DemocracyNow.org. Our headlines are also available in Spanish at our website. I'm Amy Goodman. We're here in the lower 9th Ward, just outside the Industrial Canal levee that was breached 2 years ago. The hurricane hit 2005, August 29th. And what happened, the devastation, people talk about a natural disaster and an unnatural disaster. Well, many in New Orleans have waited 2 years for recovery. The restructuring of its schools seems to happen overnight. Not long after Hurricane Katrina flooded New Orleans, the Louisiana legislature cleared the way for the state to assume control of 107 out of 128 schools in the New Orleans district. Immediately, the state began converting many of its newly acquired schools to charter schools, publicly funded schools run by for-profit or nonprofit groups that operate by a charter or contract. One result is that the number of unionized teachers dropped from about 4,700 to 500. Nat LaCour is the Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of Teachers. He's the former president of the United Teachers of New Orleans. He joins us now here in New Orleans, came for the anniversary observances yesterday, is flying back to Washington today. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Nat LaCour.
Thank you for inviting me.
How is it for you to be here in the lower 9th Ward?
It's really depressing. Obviously, we are dissatisfied with the rate of progress in rebuilding the city. And of course, the lower 9th Ward was the hardest hit.
Talk about the situation with the teachers. I don't think most people in this country understand the hurricane that swept through the schools after the natural hurricane.
Well, that is correct. It's not Katrina that did the damage. It's many of the elected officials in this state and in this local community that on the heels of the storm, they terminated almost all of the school employees. And so it wasn't just teachers, paraprofessionals, cooks, bus drivers, principals. They fired 7,500 people. Now the tragedy—
They fired everyone?
Yes. The tragedy of that is that many of these individuals had been impacted by the storm, lost their property, only to discover that there were people who were conspiring to take their jobs. And when you took their job, you also took their insurance. Even for the people who were retired and was participating in a local health care plan, the premiums went up so much, they tripled, that many people had to drop their insurance even if they were staying here. So you had a really bad situation, not well thought out, but people attempting to seize the opportunity to create charter schools and to take control of the school system. Now, that was bad for the adults. But the second tragedy here is when you have young people, school-age children, particularly elementary students, who experience a tragedy in their life, and certainly Katrina was one. What all the professionals will say to you is that the first thing that you need to do is to get those children back in a normal setting as much as possible. That would mean returning these kids, opening the schools so that they could be with their schoolmates and the teachers and the staff that they have come to know. Instead, the schools were closed for the people who wanted to come back or for the people that were here, in order to accommodate this experiment with, I would call it, control. Many of the schools that open as charter schools have selected admission policies, which mean that they get to determine which students will attend and which students will not. And so what you have here, if the population is not careful, you set up an elitist type school system and we need to avoid that.
You know, yesterday at the tribunal, there were these T-shirts that said, "Don't believe the hype. The recovery is not, quote, slow. This is an experiment in privatization of an entire city."
Yes. I agree with that, but I think it's a serious mistake. The things that they have done under the guise of attempting to improve the schools, they could have done that, working with the traditional public schools, but they chose not to.
So you have the, quote, recovery schools, named so even before Hurricane Katrina. These are the big public schools. One of the schools, the John McDonough
Yes.
School, something like 35 security, 23 teachers, 86 kids expelled, 84 kids graduate. I think that was the statistics in the Nation piece on this. One of the students saying, "When I come to school, I feel like I'm going to visit someone in prison."
Well, I only know what I've read and heard. Obviously, I talked to the teachers in the union here, and so I know a little bit about John Mack, but nothing firsthand. Let me simply say this. I don't think there's anybody in New Orleans who would say that they were satisfied with the school system prior to Katrina. Because there's an effort to say that there are people here who want the status quo. That is not true. What we want are efforts on the part of school officials and elected officials to improve the schools. And we maintain that a lot of the attention and the focus that have been given should have been given to reopening the schools. You had a reduced student population, so you could have kept your teachers, reduced class size, which is one of the major factors in getting students to do better. But they chose not to do that. And we just think that it's a real danger. Now, things may work out. Our union is still around. When you said 500, we didn't have 500 because everybody lost their job. And as of yesterday, we had 1,200 members because people understand that there's a need to join in a manner in which they can collectively impact decision-making, and that is what is needed. We've had a union in this city since 1937. We were one of the first communities in the Deep South to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement. It is not the union contract or the teachers that were the problem. It's a lack of resources. And that continues to be the situation. And it doesn't matter whether the schools are run by the state or the local school board. If you don't put in sufficient resources, if you don't give the teachers the wherewithal that they need to provide quality education, then you are not going to do a good job of reaching all of your students, but particularly your disadvantaged students. And so we're interested in all students, not some students. When they opened the schools here and made some of the schools charter schools, they took their best schools and made them charter schools. And so obviously these schools opened, there were places for the kids who were doing well to get back to a rather normal setting. The other parents and kids have had to fish, go around and find places. Kids have been turned down. I'm sure that they will do a better job, but all of the so-called problems that we're experiencing now was not necessary. Our union is committed to work with school officials and elected people to rebuild the school system, to make it better. It can be done, but we have to work together as a team, not one group of people attempting to just force upon the community what they think is right or the best way.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us. We've been speaking with Nat LaCour. He is the Secretary-Treasurer of the American Federation of Teachers. He's the former president of the Union of Teachers here in New Orleans. We're going to be here for another day on the second anniversary of Hurricane Katrina and the breaching of the levees, and we look forward to hearing your questions as well to put to our guests. You can email us at mail, @democracynow.org. We're broadcasting from the lower Ninth Ward, just in front of the Industrial Canal levee that was breached, just in front of Common Ground Relief, where thousands have come from not only around the country but around the world to help rebuild homes, to to help people here who are suffering. I want to thank the whole team that made this broadcast possible. I want to thank Anjali Kamet and David Goodman and Dennis Moynihan and all the team in New York, Shrifado Kadus and Mike Burke and Anjali Kamet, as well as Elizabeth Press and Becca Staley, Carrie Mache. I want to thank the New Orleans crew, John George and Mark Moore and Brian McCann and Scott Larman, Janice Thomason, Don Lagarde, Jess Crawford as well. Our website is democracynow.org. You can watch the broadcast there, you can listen to it, you can read the transcripts. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.